Awesome. So excited to have Kiana Rose Wolfe with us in the conversation today. Kiana and I met, this is so wild, a mutual friend, Marcia Kimpton, who had invited me to Hawaii. And I was like, I can't go to Hawaii. I have too much to do. I have life to live. I have this, I have that, every excuse in the book not to do it. But then all of a sudden I found myself on an airplane because it was like, do this. I got somebody covered my dog, somebody covered my kid, everything was taken care of. And so when do you do that self-care? And I did. And as I
Yeah.
was, there, and one of the people I met there, in addition to meeting a spiritual social club member in yoga class, right next to me in yoga class, the
Oh,
craziest
really?
thing
How funny.
ever. It was so crazy. So it was meant to be. I was meant to go there. I was meant to meet Kiana, and I was meant to have the kind of conversations like what we're going to have today. Intuition is something that everybody has, and Kiana talks about this in her Instagram, and we all talk about this in the Spiritual Social Club. But whether or not you choose to develop your intuitive abilities is up to you. Not everybody is going to be, like a Grammy award-winning singer, but everybody can sing in the shower. And with practice, you
Mhm.
can get better and better and better. But some are born with that beautiful gift that, is just like a songbird. And some people are just kind of getting their way through the motions, but it's different levels, right? So how did it work for you, Kiana? How did it start developing when you knew, oh my gosh, I've got this wiring. What am I going to do about it?
Well, I think that's such a beautiful way to describe it, because I definitely am of the belief that it's our natural innate ability to read each other's minds is not paranormal. It's not extrasensory. It's not our sixth sense is our very normal natural state. It's so natural. And because we're so bombarded externally from other stimuli, we can't always hear that inner quiet wisdom, because it can be very subtle. For what came online for me as a young child, I believe was really triggered by my lack of eyesight.
Mhm.
That's what I've come to kind of realize, because that one sense was so diminished. I was legally blind. At that time in the 70s, no one really tested. Now they test babies. I think their vision, they're able to see, and they give like little babies glasses. I definitely didn't have that until I was 4. By
Wow.
that time, my eyesight had diminished to such a degree. I had to have eye surgery. I would have been blind. I would have been blind today. Like, I would have lost my eyesight completely.
Mhm.
But I was blind for a time,
Mhm.
especially after that surgery, because they put patches on both the eyes. I was 5 years old. It's a I don't have a real conscious memory of it, but I know something shifted dramatically after that. And that's what I believe. So I believe like trauma can trigger an intense spiritual awakening.
Right.
Or like in my situation, more of a circumstance can trigger it.
Right.
I didn't feel traumatic. It just felt like my life. I didn't know I saw any different. And I remember telling my mom shortly around that time, I was definitely around 5, because her mom had passed, but I didn't know it. I
Right.
don't think they told me. And I was dancing with my grandmother, who we called abuelita, and I was dancing with her in the room we were not allowed in, our living room, which was like this like coppery, bronzy, crushed velvet
Mhm.
sofas. Like, it's very vivid. And we were not allowed in there because it would make a mess, and that was for guests, and it was like off limits for the kids.
Right.
So it was very beautiful experience dancing with my grandmother in this living room. And the dress she was wearing was also velvet, but it was my mom's dress. My mom had this magenta velvet dress with a sash around the middle and a bow. And I was dancing up close to her, and I remember feeling that fabric and how much I loved it. And I was so happy, and we were having such a good time. And so I was telling my mom about it. Oh, how, I saw abuelita and we danced. It was so much fun. And she was just in tears and realized, or no, she told me or
Mhm.
something. I don't know how she told me, but basically my grandmother was already gone. She had passed. But so as a child, this was very real. It was
Right.
not a dream. It was not a
Right.
psychic experience. It was all like, it was just real. And so as time went on, I started to understand that was a visitation, and I'd always had them. My mom says I always had imaginary friends,
Sure.
and I don't always open up to that with clients, though. I'm very, very specific,
Mhm.
because I did get frightened in my 20s. I scared myself when I was practicing more astral travel and projecting myself outward. And so I kind of I'm very deliberate with my work. I know there's a lot of psychic mediums out there who are very, very interested in doing that work. Sometimes I'm not
Mhm.
so interested in that work. I do it on occasion.
Mediumship, you mean? Or astral
Mediumship.
travel? Okay, yeah.
Specifically mediumship. So mediumship, just to be clear, is when you are connecting with people who have passed on and you're relaying messaging.
Right, right,
Sometimes those people are just confused and lost and they just want to be heard and validated.
right,
Sometimes their message is really, really important and is aligned with the work that I'm doing with my client. And that's when I'll do the mediumship work. Otherwise, I don't offer those
right.
sorts of readings because a lot of times what I've personally found is that doesn't always help heal or clarify for the person. Sometimes it's almost like opening a wound over and over,
Mhm.
and it's also not allowing that being to just be at peace. You can call them back all the time, and sometimes that's not the best interest. So there's
Right,
just personal beliefs around that I
right.
I have about it.
Well, the information that you're getting intuitively for, it's like psychic information, is probably coming from their guides or their higher self or whatever it is. It doesn't have to come. I always say this to people. I don't care if this information is coming from your dead dad or your guardian angel. The point is you set the intention that you're going to give them the message that they need for their highest good, for their healing, for their
That's right.
growth, so that they can move forward in grace. And, it's a good point that you say that about the mediumship piece, because I was just interviewing somebody very recently who had a near-death experience, and she was saying that yes, sometimes look, if they're really truly in the light, they're not going to come back with "I'm sorries" or whatever, because no, when
No.
you're in the light, you chose to be that person for them, to bring up conflicts,
Yeah.
to bring up whatever it is, the good, the bad, all of it. They signed up for it and they played their role perfectly, and they get over there and it's like, look at how I push that bruise for you, or had you find love in your heart, or had you feel frustration. It's all there without judgment. It just is. It's
Yeah.
not bad or
Absolutely.
good. It just is. So any energy that is kind of not quite in the light, there are a lot of people who pass and they stay close to this frequency, to the third dimension, because either they were atheist or narcissist, or they had a very sudden passing and they were catapulted out very quickly and didn't adjust. There's all sorts of ways. And like you said, it's like talk to the hand. I have no, I've interviewed people who see them in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they're like, like a fly swatter, like, go away, please. I'm only in the light now. And I think that's really important right now, because the veil is thinning and there's more and more people opening up. And if you're not discerning on who and what you're communicating with, it could get messy, can't it?
Yeah, it's really important, and also grounding, because I see a lot of people really jumping in. People are waking up to their psychic abilities, which I love. But
Mhm,
I came from a lineage where when I was initiated as a shamanic practitioner, what
mhm,
we call priestess, shamanic is a loaded word sometimes, but um, we were really encouraged to develop our
mhm,
training for a long, like I practiced for over a decade without taking clients because for several reasons. First, I was a stay-at-home mom, so that was my priority, but
right?
also because in our lineage and in my own belief system, you really want to hone your craft
Mhm,
and be very grounded, and you need to know who you are in these spaces because the
mhm,
infinite is vast. It's infinite. It's ginormous. And I have seen people you can lose your mind, you can lose your sense of self, you can become mad. And
yeah.
people when they wake up to their psychic abilities can't always decipher who they are and what is coming through. You
Mhm,
can become such a vacuum for energy
right.
that you're just all over the place and you're scattered. And so it's so important to have a very grounded sense of self in the earth body and the earth vessel, which is not always easy, especially for people like me who are much more comfortable in the etheric.
Right.
But that's why it's so important to really practice coming into the vessel, into the body, and learning your space and your book boy, your energy field, and having that really crafted, cultivated, nurtured, grown saturated with your own mana, your own essence, so
Mhm.
that when you're working with clients, it becomes very clear what's yours, what's theirs, and what's coming through.
Right.
I have so many people like, and I became a Reiki master. And again, my first Reiki training was in 2007. So I've been doing this a long time. And I have people I've meet who like do a Reiki training and they do level 1 and 2 at the same time. And then they do a mastership and then they're seeing clients very quickly.
Mhm.
And I feel like that it's not bad,
Right.
but sometimes it can be overwhelming to the person.
Yeah.
And it's a little, I think, a disservice to the clients because you're just not ready. You
Right.
just really do need to take time with this. I think it's really important to develop, just like any profession, any
Yeah.
skill, you use practice, 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 and then offer. Like that's
Right.
just my belief
I
system. So
completely agree, and I'm so exhausted
uh,
about the people wanting to hang a shingle after one Reiki certification. And I understand they're excited, they want to help, they want to connect, but there's also so much
yeah,
value to working with people who have been doing it for a while. Like, why do you think in medical school they have you do a residency? So you're working
yes,
underneath these people. But yes, you can be thrown into an ER and suddenly you're stitching people up, and the more you do it, the better you're going to get. But this know thyself piece, I think a lot of young practitioners they're foregoing it completely, and they're trying to sprint to the finish line when there's so much value to walking each step and looking around and going, oh, this is how I feel when this kind of client is with me. This is how I feel when I forget to put up my protection. This is how I feel when I really connect into this chakra or whatever. It's all a learning experience. And even, starting off with seeing clients part-time while you develop more. Walk before you run, people. I know everybody wants to sprint to the finish line, and that's where I think we get into trouble. Like you say, it's a disservice to the client, not just to the practitioner.
yourself. And you don't want to get so overwhelmed, or like I said, I've seen people shatter a bit in their mind, their
Yeah.
psyche, their emotional body. They become frazzled, they get sick, their body
Mhm.
gets illness, their mental health is diminished. They're just overwhelmed. So another component that's so important is
Mhm.
community
Mhm.
and mentorship.
Yes.
Like I firmly believe in finding a mentor that's resonant for you.
Yeah.
We don't have, it's not cultivated in our cultures, in our time, in this time in the world. We don't have that sort of elder that we look to, but that is so critical to
Mhm.
developing these gifts and to having and to have that communal support over time
Right.
and as you practice,
Mhm.
because you get that feedback and it's not all it's not like all cheerleading. It's like, sometimes the reflection could be a
Right.
challenge to your ego,
Mhm.
um or to part of the spiritual practice is to be clear of who you are, where your limitations are, what your gifts are. Own your gifts and work on your weaknesses. Like own
Right.
them and develop
Own
them
it.
and work with someone you trust, because there's so many people
Right.
you
Mhm.
don't want to hand over this power to, because there are manipulators, there are
Yeah.
charlatans, there are people
Yeah.
who will take advantage of a vulnerable student who wants to learn and grow.
Right.
I've seen that too.
I've
Or they
seen
get
that
in
too.
competition with other
Yeah.
students.
We've talked about this. It's like, yes, it's so interesting how there's enough people out there who need guidance to go around, right? And so the competition piece, it really boggles my mind, but also too, feedback, as you say, is not judgment. Feedback is how you get better. If you're playing
Yes.
baseball and your coach doesn't say, hey, lift your elbow a little bit more, you're going to hit the ball harder. Oh, okay. Thank you. Say thank you when you get feedback. I've been mentoring now for a couple of years, but that was after 18 years. I took my first Reiki class in 1999. I did it for,
Mm,
like you, a decade, totally under the radar. And then it was finally
yeah.
like the pandemic hit, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to share this now publicly. I can't believe this. A
Right.
lot of fear associated with that because of my journalism background. But now I'm like, forget it. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. This is what's happening. This is who I am. And I say, look, I'm
Oh,
here. I'm
good.
clear. Get used to it. I'm here. I'm clear. Get
Yeah.
used to it. So that bottom,
Hey.
yay. And I'm amazed at how when I'm mentoring people and I give feedback, because been there, done that, got the t-shirt, I was doing what they were doing 20 plus years ago. They just go, no,
Right.
you're chastising me. See you later. And they shut it down. And that is when you're not ready to be taking clients if you can't take feedback from a mentor.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
real 1 + 1 = 2. And so what can we do to help these young budding practitioners to feel the confidence, but also hold themselves accountable to the process? I think that's part of, young, I hate to say this, kids today, but really because everybody gets a trophy at the baseball game. Like, how can we help people not by being critical? It's feedback. It's a difference. How do we do this, Kiana?
Well, I love what you said too. And I feel like when those people shut it down, that's perfect too. Like, I really do. I feel like they shut it down. They're not going to not get the lesson. They just might get the lesson in a different way. They're like, forget it
Hmm.
because it's bringing up
Right.
some scat or some skata is like a little ripple in the pond at the bottom. It's like a Hindu term, Sanskrit term, but it's like
Mhm.
they're hitting like a scar, a
Right.
little scar. You're hitting a scar when you're doing that. And they're not ready to look at that. But it doesn't mean you didn't plant the seed. So even though they're saying no, like
Hmm.
how I've done that with my mentors. Like, I mean, I feel like we've all done that, or to teachers or even our husbands or whatever. Like,
Right.
there's moments where we're not ready to hear it, but you kind of hear it anyway, even though you don't want to. So it still works. And I think just holding space, because there's no wrong. I love the quote from Rumi that says, there's 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are
Yeah.
100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground.
Hmm.
Just because they're doing it quickly
Hmm.
doesn't mean my way is right or their way is wrong. It just means they're doing it a different way. And so holding space for them so that they feel safe enough to come to me,
Right.
asking questions rather than saying you have to do it this way,
Hmm.
knowing that their way might be, it's like reciprocal. Because I feel like I learned so much from these this younger generation. They have a courageousness that I feel like kids in the 80s, like me, just did
Right.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were not, no. And they're just like out there like, oh, I'm the best. And I'm, I
Right.
can offer all this stuff. And in some ways, that is awesome.
Yeah.
So it's not like you'd want them to be more like us either. I'm just trying to hold space so that we can work together, because whenever there's a mentorship, I get as much, if not more, from whoever I'm working with.
Right.
I learned so much from whoever is in my community, or like even clients. Like, how
Right.
many times have you had a client where you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Right.
I met you in a reading, and I feel like I have so many questions for you because Marcia signed you up for a reading with me,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
it's like,
Yep. Yep.
how do we, yeah, but then I met you and I'm like, oh my gosh, she is fabulous. I want to talk to her because you have so many skills and knowledge that I'm still working on.
Right.
So I feel like there's always,
Yeah, we can all fill in each other's holes. That's the point of this
oh
community.
my gosh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
borrow from each other's strengths.
Right.
As someone
Exactly.
said, borrowing from someone's ego strength. And I feel like that's a term that's so demonized. The ego is not a bad thing. It's inherent in our nature. We have to
Need
embrace
it to
it.
be
It's
human.
time to be
Yes.
friends.
Right. Right.
It's there anyway. We may as well honor it and use
Right.
it because it's saved us many times. And
Mhm.
this term this gal used was ego, like riding on someone's ego. Basically, you're piggybacking on their ego strength where
Mhm.
you're limited or weak, right? And you just,
Right.
so there's always going to be, even if you're mentoring someone,
Mhm.
a gift from that person, always. And so
Right.
just holding space for them and inviting them and creating workshops and putting yourself out there, which I'm not always the best at, that sort of
Mhm.
self marketing piece, but
Right. Right.
being being available. I think just
Mhm.
being available and letting them know that you're available and is amazing. I think you're great at that.
Well, I think
Yeah.
I'm so in awe of how you bring all these different modalities together. So, how do you bring the shamanic into your intuitive, and what you were taught, like you said, what you learned for all those years and the lineage? There's such a respect for this type of healing modality that, like you said, it takes a long time to be passed down, as there's so many things that have been forgotten because they weren't passed down and
Yeah.
cherished, right? So talk to me about how that works in the intuitive work that you do.
Well, what I tend to tell clients is it's really all the same, because
Right.
energy is energy and everything is energy, right? So energetic work or energy healing work, whether it's shamanic in nature, which my lineage is from the Incan shamanic tradition, or the ancient Incas, which is the Andean lineage, right? Or Reiki mastership, which is Japanese, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, oh, I forgot it, Usui
Mm-hmm.
is the main
Right.
one that we study in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
And Reiki is just energy. Shamanic healing is just energy, and they're very, very similar. And in the as a Paco practitioner, a Paco priestess, we talk about belts. So we call them nyawis, and they're these belts, illuminated belts that have many, many eyes all over our vessel. And we talk about our popo, which is our energy field. People
Mm-hmm.
call it auras. The word in Quechua
Mm-hmm.
is Sami, which sounds a lot like Shakti, and it's very similar. Sami is the finest living energy on the planet. Reiki is the
Right.
finest living energy on the planet, and we
Right.
tap in, and then we have these belts that are very similar to the chakras
Mm-hmm.
in tradition.
Wow.
So there's no, and every time I study anything, all I see are
Through
the
lines.
similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh, they are so aligned. It's 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground.
Right.
They're really, we really are one.
Right.
And it's just a million different languages for the same thing.
Yes.
So
Yep.
they work harmoniously together because they are not different.
Right.
So because I've studied them differently, and I'm here in Hawaii, so I bring that as well as my, my South American lineage and my Reiki mastership and the Hawaiian stuff and yoga. I incorporate a lot of yogic truths as well, because
Yep. It's
there's
all.
no,
Mm-hmm.
it's a beautiful weave. It's like a tapestry that you're just,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes one aligns better for the client than another. So for me, it just works well. And it's hard to explain though, like, like,
Yeah.
you
No, I
know,
get it.
and crystals. I love using crystals, not because they do have an energetic field, I know, but it's not because they have, their own, it's like directing our power with it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it magnifies and amplifies and clears. And so I
Right.
love using crystals in work too.
Right. Totally.
I don't know. And yeah, and it depends
Oh,
on what you like, right?
right. Exactly. So I'm curious what you think. What do you think of people who are too dependent on other intuitives to get their guidance? I mean, I've had to not see clients for a while because I feel like I'm like, you know how to do this. Like you
Oh,
got,
I get that.
yeah. So what do you tell those clients, and how do you empower them to tap into their own? Because really, like you said, we all have it, but sometimes we forget how to ride the bike.
Well, so I've had those needy clients for sure, and you just gently, lovingly encourage them to take the training wheels off and play, and then I just encourage them to book a little later versus
Mhm.
weekly.
Right.
Um, Sometimes if I feel like they're getting forgetful of their power, their
Right.
inherent power, because also drain, like it can, I don't let it, but they can also attempt to, latch on to you as a practitioner and feel like you're the savior. And no
Mhm.
matter how many times you say it, sometimes people will still project that onto you. And that could be tricky. It's really tricky. But my favorite part is teaching and
Yeah.
guiding people to connect to this power within themselves. I
Right.
always feel like we I can do it for them. I
Hmm.
could definitely in a session. I could clear it all out and they're going to feel amazing, and they always do. But if they want to learn how to do that, we need some consecutive work together.
Hmm.
And then it's like a graduation. You
Right.
graduate them. They
Right.
graduate. But I've come to now to really appreciate how much we need each other. And for
Mhm.
a long time, I was part of a spiritual community. And when that fell apart, I became very sad. I isolated myself. I was lonely and depressed, and I was grieving my community very, very much.
Right.
I still miss that community.
Hmm.
So I still have moments of grief with that. But because of that, I wasn't reaching out.
Right.
And and we need to reach out to others. So I don't think it's inherently wrong that we lean on others for guidance and that we go see psychics or mediums or whatever when we feel really called and resonant to their work.
Right.
I've finally accepted that I need that more too. And so I've started to do that more over the last few years, and it's been such a gift.
Right. I mean, that is
because we need
talk about
we
threads.
need each other.
We need
Yeah.
to, and that's what I love so much about the Spiritual Social Club. So just come join us more. If the time I know doesn't always work, because sometimes we'll meet in the mornings at like 10 in the morning on a Sunday, and that's like 5 in the morning in Hawaii. But I love the getting together once or twice a week for the annual members, where we just check in. It's like, how are you doing? What is happening? What is working well? What is not? And everybody just kind of shares what works
Oh,
well,
cool.
what doesn't. And that's what, like you said, that community that can help people just even voicing what's been going on. Can I get a witness? It's like just vocalizing it with a like-minded other to hear it, then can help you make room for more other frequencies, right? Let go of that frustration, let go of that grief, let go of that sadness, make room for more real estate, right? More frequency real estate. And I'm seeing things, and I wonder if you are too, women not standing up for themselves, right? Serving everyone else before themselves. And as like the priestess energy, we have got to flip the script. So what advice would you give to those who have been in service to everyone but themselves? And they know that, especially this year, as we're having this conversation in 2024, this is the year that this has got to shift to this divine feminine kind of energy. So the masculine and the feminine can be more in balance. How would you suggest people, women particularly, empower themselves without feeling so guilty for their self-care?
That is such a lesson for me. I feel like I feel like I need to learn this so much. So it's like, we love to be in. Yeah, we do. And we tend to neglect ourselves. And I think what's working for me and what I'm working on is really making friends with my ego. And so I encourage men to embrace their competitiveness. I've always said, I'm not competitive. I'm not competitive. It's like, where does that come from and why not?
Right.
Because for me, when I was a child, that was very discouraged because there's show off, there's bossy, there's all these things that we're not supposed to be. So making friends with our ego, be a little competitive and own it. Because the truth is we are a little bit, and that doesn't mean disrespecting our competition. The best athletes are the most respectful.
Awareness. Yes.
But compete with yourself to be the best. You offer all these things to people you love and your clients, and you advise them to do all these things, and then yet we don't do it for ourselves. So how can we guide ourselves? So one of the games or practices I like to play is to write down if a client came to me with my issues, what I was dealing with. Right now, my daughter's going to be going off to college, and I'm navigating the grief of that and the bittersweetness. I'm so proud of her. I'm so excited, but I'm so sad.
Right. Me too, with my son.
I have my baby girl. Oh my God. I think we talked about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So writing is very helpful. How would I advise a client? And I realized, oh my God, I do not follow my own guidance so often. I just don't. That's the check-in, that's the mentoring, because it's really important to have that self-reflection. And so if you write out what you would write to a client or say to a client, you realize, oh, you are not doing self-care. So turning that love inward and embracing all the sides of yourself, including the fact that you do want to win, the fact that you do want to succeed, the fact that you do want to, all these things that we attribute to selfishness. It's not selfish. You can really nourish yourself. If we're being selfish, especially if it's women as moms, the most, I feel like, selfish in the loving way, the better we are. And the more, don't you find, like, when you take care of yourself, you're so much nicer to people. You're kinder to your family. You're more available. You have more space. And you have more fun. And when you have more fun, you're much more contagious. You get way more downloads. So if you want to be more psychic, have more fun.
Well, that's
more self.
Pat Longwell, the healer who wrote The Gifts Beneath Your Anxiety, became a healer when she started taking tap dancing and bowling, when she joined the bowling league.
Yeah.
She was finally having fun. She was doing the things that raised her
Yeah.
frequency because she was in service to all of her kids and grandkids and teaching Sunday school and driving carpool. And she finally went, okay, here's the deal. Every Tuesday I'm going to, tap dance, and every Thursday I'm going to bowling league, and that's that. This is my time. I'm carving it out for me. And everybody is capable of this. I used to
Or
always
that
say
too.
this. Yeah, I know. We all need to do that. And I used to say this, Kiana, like when I would end every conversation, I'd say, treat others the way you'd like to be treated. But we mistreat ourselves so much that I've changed that now after like years,
Okay.
that it's treat others the way you'd like someone to treat your child or pet if you don't have a child. Because
Oh,
that everybody is, because you're someone's child too. You, Kiana, are someone's child. I'm someone's child. Like we want others to treat our child with respect, right? So treat others the way you hope someone would treat your child. Or, if you're not a parent, your fur baby, or, whatever it is. And if you're not even a parent to a fur baby or to a kid, how you would have wanted someone to treat you when you were a child, because all of our wounds come from childhood. And we think back to the
that
things.
is so powerful.
And that's been new for me. And it really helps because you will stop. And, if you saw your 7-year-old self on a playground, like with a bloody knee crying, what would you do? You would be like, oh my gosh, you would want to go help and assist. And that's really what we all are, kind of dealing with these skinned knees, right? Like
Gosh.
ouchies. Everyone's got these ouchies. So go tend to those ouchies in a nurturing, accountability kind of way, because nobody wants to be alone crying on the playground. We've all got that somewhere inside of us from some era. Anybody who's mean was obviously dealing with some fear or pain. It's like whenever I'm being like yelled at, I go, what are you afraid of right now? They're afraid. There's fear behind anger, because fear and anger are the same frequency. Love and joy are the same frequency, and they're on different floors of the building, but we forget because we're like walking around in this human suit doing our thing. And we forgot what it was like to feel like we were 5, 6, 7 years old. So I don't know. That's been helpful for me. What's one of the things that's been really helpful for you in your day to day, like with your healing hygiene or what you've been doing?
Well, I'm just going to take that for a minute because that was powerful. That was like, oh my God. Because of course I'm dealing with like a knee issue right now.
Oh,
And
no way.
it's not a skin knee, but
Right,
it's
right.
like,
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been really, and when you said that, I went, oh, how would I treat my child if this was, oh my gosh, I'd be very different. I would be like, we need to do this. We need to elevate. We need to ice. Don't worry. It's going to heal. Like, instead
Right,
of, oh, I can't do this. I can't do that. Oh my gosh.
right,
So
right.
thank you. That was so good. That was so incredible. I feel like that was a little message just for me.
Oh, good. Because I was like,
Um,
oh, I don't know where this is coming from. But this is how it works, people. Like spirit uses you. You might be sitting at the bus stop and
right?
you start talking about that, time in third grade when blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I wonder why I'm telling this story. And that person needed to hear that story. So thank you. And so that's how it works, everybody out there. So, and you even mentioning too about feeling that grief is exactly what I needed to hear, because my son's going to college too this fall, and I am literally avoiding it like hot potato. I'm like, la la la, don't want to
Me
think about
too.
it.
It's like denial is real. Oh my gosh. It's so funny. Yes, I
Totally.
get it.
Yeah. So I
Oh,
have to feel it, like they say, you got to feel it to heal it. And, there's all of it. There's the painful, but that's what gives us, the ultimate polarities in life. Like my dear friend Tracy passes away on what is my son's birthday. Like her birthday into heaven was my son's birthday into earth, right? Two people
ouch.
I love so much having that day where these two very different things happen, celebration and grief. And that's life. That's life right there.
Mm,
A celebration 1 minute, grief the next. It's all of it.
yeah.
And we got to deal
So
with, but sometimes we need someone to tell us when we've got basil in our teeth, which is where you come in, Kiana Rose. So, so you are this,
I love that.
yes, you're this intuitive guide for so many. So when people are interested in reaching out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I'm on Instagram
Okay.
at Kiana Rose Wolfe. So it's just my name. So it's easy to find. Same with my website, Kiana Wolfe with an
Okay.
E
With
dot
an
com,
E.
or they could type in KianaRoseWolfe.com, whatever, either one works.
Perfect.
Google reviews, so they could just type in my name in Google, they'll find me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
on Telegram and Facebook. So
Good, good.
yeah.
Well, look in the notes, everybody, if you're curious. I'll have Kiana's name spelled out there with the website so you can get more information and book your session. And I'm just always so grateful for your energy. And it's so good to see your smiling face. And we'll get you on the Spiritual Social Club coming up here soon to chat about some things and give insights to everybody who needs them. And to anybody
Can't wait.
watching
That'll be
this,
so fun.
yeah, it would be so awesome for you all watching this to get some one-on-one time with Kiana and get her insights, because that's how it works. We stay connected. You go with who you feel is resonating for you. So like if you're watching this video and you feel some sort of physical reaction like goosebumps or a hell yes, I tell people like carbonated water is like, yay, or like just energy is everything and you can feel it in your body. So if your tuning fork is going, yay, reach out to Kiana and you will get some insights that you need in this moment.
Awesome.
Because yeah, it's awesome. So thank you for
I'm
all
here
you
for
do.
it. I love it.
I love it.
Thank you. This has
Oh,
been a lot of fun. We'll talk
okay.
soon. We'll connect, and yeah, let
Absolutely.
me know about the spiritual social club. That would be fun.
Very good. Perfect. More conversations to come, everybody. Stay tuned.